Now by an old pal, former longtime president of the Ottawa Senators. He spent 13 years with the Sens. Before that, he was an executive with the LA Kings. We have not had him on this show in a year. It's incredible. It's been a year since we had him on. I am joined now by Roy Mlaker. Ram, it is great to have you back. How are you, Roy?
Romy, been a long time. I'm pretty good, I'll tell you the truth. I think that yesterday took hockey up another notch. It was tremendous drama, great for the game. Two cities that are rabid about their teams, and it just, I think, really put hockey up another notch.
Ram, I want to make sure that I get caught up with you personally before we leave, but let's talk about that series for a moment. First of all, how important is it for the NHL to have a winner of the Stanley Cup in a major U.S. city, and a major U.S. city that had fallen off in terms of hockey in recent years?
3 years ago, Chicago was 29th in attendance in the National Hockey League. They had none of their games on local television. They were irrelevant. You never saw Bobby Hull. You know, never saw Stan Mikita at a game, never saw Tony Esposito. Everything they had accomplished in the early 60s and the strong teams that they had, they were just memories. And then they had the tragic, obviously, death of Mr. Wirtz, who had very strong beliefs, and his oldest son, Rocky, took over, changed the entire philosophy of the Blackhawks. The alumni became relevant, brought back old Pat Foley, who was the famous announcer that they had in the early days, went back to all the old ideals and ideas that were brand new as well, and turned the franchise around by drafting well, staying the course. General Manager Dale Talon did a really good job, followed by Stan Bowman, of staying on the course with young kids. Made a couple key veteran acquisitions, like Johnny Madden, who can't be underestimated how much he contributes to a hockey club. He may be a fourth-line center, third-line center, but he's a heart and soul of stopping the other team's number one line, and he proved that again in this series.
Roy Mlaker joining us, longtime pal of the program, longtime NHL executive. Man, Philadelphia's got nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, they fought until the bitter end. In the end, though, they just fought out of their weight class, didn't they?
Well, they ran up against a team that was favored to win the Stanley Cup, and the Philadelphia Flyers, while today they're heartbroken, because as Brian Burke told me in 2007 when we lost to the Ducks, there's only one parade. Tomorrow they should be very proud. Ed Snyder and Peter Luco, the people who run that team, and along with Paul Holmgren, who's the general manager, had an unbelievable year. I mean, let's face facts. Michael Leighton was their seventh goalkeeper. It wasn't by design he was in goal. And people will talk about today, and they'll be right, by the way, and look upon this series, and the one thing you're going to look upon is not great goaltending, Jimmy, not great goaltending. That last goal, if Michael Leighton stands up, it doesn't go in the net. All he has to do is straight up to the shooter, and that doesn't go in the net. But let's face facts. This guy came out of the minor leagues. He was waived. He had a tremendous playoff run for the Flyers. They should be very, very proud.
Roy Mlaker joining us. You know, Ram, it's interesting. You're right. I mean, you can't expect more than what they got from him. He gave them so much more than you could realistically expect. But that said, if Philadelphia had even above average goaltending in that series, even despite the talent differential, Philadelphia could have won that series, right?
I agree. You know, you look back upon these games, you know, 6-5 in the first one, Chicago. Come on. Obviously, neither of these guys were very good. You know, 7-4 in Game 5. And he had to bring in Boucher, who obviously has had a tough year, too. I mean, he wasn't by design the backup goaltender. You know, you remember in the offseason last year, they went out to look for a number one guy, and they gambled on Ray Emery. And now you're down. You look at how many goaltenders they've had, Backlund, Boucher. I can't remember all of them. Michael Leighton was put in a very difficult position. And if you look at the whole, he got them to the finals.
Roy Mlaker joins us. You know, Roy, I look at Chicago, and they've got so much talent, and they've got so much speed, and they've got so much skill. But I was taken also by the fact that their skill guys are very smart. They stayed away from the stupid penalty. They didn't overreact. They didn't retaliate. You couldn't really bait them into things. Talk about how intelligently the skill guys played, and the young guys especially.
Well, the young guys, you know, really stepped it up. I mean, and they had to, because when you look at two guys who have been there before, and by the way, I love these guys. They're great character players. But what did Marian Hussa do in the finals? What about Brian Campbell? got to step up. They're guys who have been there before. They're veteran hockey players. They're guys, they're free agents. Those kids carried them. And I'm not trying to be negative about those two guys, but the fact is, you know, if the kids didn't step it up, then they wouldn't be having a parade in Chicago today.
Roy Mlaker joining us on the program. Roy, how about Chris Pronger? I mean, the guy is so polarizing and so classic and gets under so many people's skin and in their heads and makes people so angry. What a great postseason that guy had at 35, playing 30 minutes a night. Let me get your thoughts on Pronger.
He doesn't make the media too happy. He challenges them the way he challenges the forwards. I got to give Dustin Bufflin a lot of credit because he took all that punishment in front and came away with 8 goals. But Pronger's superhuman out there. I mean, at his age, playing 30, 32 minutes a game, that's incredible. And he does it with the feistiness of Keith Magnuson in the 60s.
Ram, what do you make of Chicago? It's amazing they've been able to stockpile this much talent under the cap, but what about the cap and what's going to happen this summer? Are they built for the long haul, or might this have been the one time that window opened up for them?
This was definitely their window. I hate to be critical on the next day of a Stanley Cup when everybody's celebrating, but when you have so many good young players in this system, where the cap is the cap, guys are going to want, their free agency. They're going to want their time, and you just can't keep everybody. And I think that the problem for Stan Bowman now is, who can I keep? You bring a guy in and you see the window, as I mentioned, for John Madden. Now what? How much longer can you keep a veteran guy like him who's got, 3 or 4 cups? And no one ever talked about who Dustin Bufflin was before this series started. Everybody's talking about him now. Here's a guy who was originally a defenseman. Moved him up the forward. Then, when they had an injury in the playoffs, he went back to play D. Not many people can do that. And Dustin Bufflin proved that, he's just a superhuman being as far as the versatility that he possesses.
Roy Mlaker joins us. Roy, you and I talked at the beginning about how important it was for the NHL to get a win like that in a town like that. What about the big picture of this year? Talk to me for a minute about the Olympic experience. It was a great, great tournament. Do you feel like the NHL got some residual benefit from that, or was that just good for those 2 weeks, and is it something that they should not continue to do? Where do you come out?
I have very mixed emotions about this. From a business perspective, shutting down for 17 days, while it doesn't seem to hurt the Canadian teams, it certainly hurts the small market American teams because you become irrelevant for almost 3 weeks. The NBA takes over. You still got potentially football, and it's very difficult to become completely irrelevant for 3 weeks. Having said that, they rolled the dice in a big city, close to the United States, Vancouver, and who ends up in the finals? U.S. and Canada. Couldn't ask for anything more. So if Russia ended up against Finland in the finals, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. The fact is that the right 2 cities wound up. Now, are you going to go to Russia and do this? And have games at 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning? Who's going to be watching those? Are you going to put them on delay? Nobody watches delay anymore. So I think it's going to be a very tough decision from the governors, but one that you're going to have to look at the business as a whole and say, this might be the time we don't go. And if I still had a vote, that's exactly how I'd vote.
Television coverage, Ram, is so important. What do you think about the league's current deal with Versus and how they handle the NHL?
Well, there were 60 million homes just 2 years ago. There are 85 million homes now. Still not in a lot of hotels that they want to be in. It happens to be, the hallmark of television, sports on TV. Is it better to go back to, where they were before, but being relevant on the sports superstar, and that's, of course, obviously ESPN? I think that because of the Olympic ratings, because of these ratings, I believe they got over a 5-point last night. Because of the way it's come now, I think they're going to have some competition for the first time in maybe 20 years, maybe that long. I think there's other people interested. It's going to be a very interesting decision for the National Hockey League and also the competitors.
Roy Mlaker is my guest.